Hi class, I just wanted to make a short video to go over the first essay assignment. Most of you did great. Um, I want you to know that if you got a grade of B or higher, you are doing very well. It's been a little bit harder teaching remotely than usual, so essay scores have been just a little bit lower than average, and I think that's to be expected. I wouldn't sweat it if I were you. I've got additional elements in our syllabus to account for that, additional ways that you can make up points. And in general, students in my class, their grades go up as they complete more essays. So I think you should feel good about that. That essay number one is often more of a learning experience than anything for students. So you're going to pick up some tips and hints here, and I think the best way to do this is to go over one of the better student essays with you all. And if you are the student who wrote this, give yourself a pat on the shoulder. There's my disappearing hand. Where'd it go? It's in another dimension. Give yourself a pat on the back for writing an excellent essay. And I should also tell you that the highest grades are A minuses. Nobody was able to get everything perfect for an A essay, which is actually pretty hard to do in the first essay in an English class. So don't sweat that. But what I want to do here is go into this essay here. And there, you can still see me in the corner. Excellent. So when I grade essays, I'm very thorough with the comments that appear over here on the right side of the page. I want you to pay close attention to those because that is the advice I'm giving you to the best of my ability to help you become a better writer in the future. And of course, you're going to be writing a letter of reflection this week. And in that letter, you're going to talk about your entire essay process. Did you brainstorm? Did you free write? Did you make an outline? Did you do multiple drafts of your essay? And then also, very importantly, how are you going to implement the advice that I'm giving you over here, all this color-coded stuff? How are you going to use the things I pointed out to you to your advantage so that you don't have to make similar mistakes in the future? So that said, let's move through this. Over here on the left, you'll see that the author has done a good job of getting the format right. 1-inch margins on all the sides, Times New Roman 12-point font. Simple title. It could probably be a little bit more specific, and you'll see that's what I wrote to this student. The title's a bit broad. It might be helpful to talk about oppression and language more specifically as it relates to, in this case, it's Gloria Anzaldúa and Audre Lorde. Anyway, let's work through this. You'll see here the next thing that's in blue is this phrase, keeping the oppression of minorities prolonged. I said that that's wordy. And I gave an alternate way of writing this phrase and a link to a page about wordiness. And if any of you are concerned about what that means, please look it up on your own. Just look up wordiness, and you'll find plenty of information about that. That said, if you had a problem with wordiness in your essay, I will have pointed it out to you and included this link for you to click on. Now notice here, though, we have in this magenta or pink or whatever it is, the square, I asked that this author briefly introduce the authors and their essays before discussing their arguments. That way readers will know exactly what you're writing about. So let's make this a little bigger. There we go. So this is just saying, hey, why don't you let your reader know who Audre Lorde and Gloria Anzaldúa are before you move on. And that's going to go for a lot of your essays, because a lot of you, I think, assumed you're writing for me, for a reader who is already familiar with your subject matter. But it's important to remember that when you're writing, you are writing for a wider academic audience. not just for your professor. Here's some green selected here. And that's just praise, strong thesis, well done. So let's move on to the next paragraph here where the author talks about both Enzaldua and Audre Lorde feel that by limiting self-expression, a person is on the oppressor's side. Knowingly so or not, I deleted the word so because it's not necessary. Chicanos were brought up by the idea. Now, this is a very minor thing. I think you could fix it easily, but the problem with this is it's ambiguous. And ambiguous means there's more than one way to interpret something. So a sentence or a phrase like Chicanos were brought up by the idea, it's a clause actually, not a phrase, but you guys don't need to memorize that stuff right now. If we say, hold on, I don't know how to pause this. So I guess it's just gonna seem like a lecture where I'm just kind of riffing because I can't pause this to make my video perfect. So you're just gonna have to hang in there. It's ambiguous in that it can be read more than one way. And the idea did not bring up Chicanos. That's like saying any Chicano person, rather than being brought up by mom and dad, was brought up by an idea. So it's a picky little thing, but you want to get all your words chosen perfectly, as concise and precise as possible, and put in the right order so that the reader can read through a sentence once and understand exactly what you mean. So I asked the author to clear that up. Now at this one, we have a quote here. At Pan American University, I and all Chicano students were required to take 2 speech classes, their purpose to get rid of our accents. And I wrote to the author, this quote isn't unique enough to warrant quotation, instead paraphrase it. So this gets into knowing when to paraphrase the writers and when to quote from them. You want to save those quotations for those really good, juicy, perfect quotes where the author has said something very unique, they've used their own terms, or they've said something very strongly and memorably. That's when you want to put it in quotes. Do word for word, put it in your essay exactly the way the author said it. If it's something about general information or basic background facts about a writer, you don't need to quote it. Just paraphrase it and add that to your summary about the author. And that's what I'm asking this student to do. There's also a space missing right here, but I didn't want to heap everything in there, but there should be a space between the quote and the citation. Okay, here we have they here, and this is an ambiguous pronoun. I don't know who they is. You always have to have an antecedent whenever you use a pronoun. And this one, it's not clear who they are. I can assume they are the school administration or members of the dominant culture and class who want Chicanos to speak English or Spanish and not a hybrid language. But a good essay is going to make that clear to me. I won't have to guess that. With said, I said change it to writes. That has to do with using good signal phrases. If you find yourself saying, writing in your essay, so-and-so said this, or so-and-so stated this over and over again, probably you will have been sent a link from me, and that link will appear over here in the comments about using appropriate signal phrases. So you'd want to say something like this as she writes in her essay, or you could use something more powerful as she argues, or as she persuades readers, or as she warns the reader, or as she, anyway, you get the point. There are a lot of different verbs you can use besides said and writes and states. And I highly recommend you get used to signaling to your reader with your verb or phrase what kind of quote is coming up. So is someone challenging the notion? Is someone expressing something? Anyway, there are a whole bunch of those. So if you look up signal verbs and signal phrases, and I've sent links to many of you, you will find more than enough examples. Okay, and here's that. There's a space needed between the quote and the citation. Otherwise, this author did a great job with the citation. In green here, I'm saying that the author's comparison here was nicely done. And here's mentions. Again, that's not a great signal verb. We'd want to say something more appropriate. Well, there's the link to it over here too as well. You'll see every time there's something marked on your essay, you will see corresponding notes from me explaining to you why you might want to address this in future essays. So I'm saying, this author got an A minus. Oops, I guess you saw the last name, but hey, it's one of the best essays in both of my classes. So if I gave up your identity, I'm sorry. It's because it's such a good essay. Back to this though. Mentions is kind of casual. You mention something to somebody at a party like, hey, do you know Joe got engaged to Maria? I mentioned it. Anzaldúa is doing more than mention when she talks about being caught speaking Spanish at recess and getting 3 licks on the knuckles with a sharp ruler. That's more than mentioning. You're going to have to figure out exactly how to say it, but it's going to be she describes an incident, or she provides an example to readers of the injustice she experienced as a non-English speaker, something like that. And these are good. It's good. You always want to have a transition from one idea to the next. I'm just telling the author, good job. It's smooth. Now, talks about is always a no-no with signal verbs. You don't want to say talks about because it's literally wrong, because the essay is written, not spoken. But anyway, I've already talked about those. Here's another one, states. And here is a beautiful quote, just letting the author know, I see what you did. I like your choice of quote. The big box here is strong summary and contextualizing of Lord's core argument. I don't want to muddy up your essays. Whenever you're doing something well, I just want to highlight that you're doing well so that I don't have to have lots and lots of marks on your essay. In fact, I don't grade on a curve. If everybody writes an A essay, everybody gets an A, and I get to take the weekend off because I don't have to grade. So keep that in mind. I want you to get an A. I want everybody to pass. I want everybody to succeed and get where they want to go and not have to retake English 1A. Here is, back to the essay, here is expresses. A more appropriate signal phrase would be warns readers. Okay. Anyway, the whole point here is I wanted to show you what essays look like and how my grading process works, because these comments that I make to you specifically are the most important thing you will get from me in this class. It is the thing that will help you going forward in college more than any of the activities or the quizzes, anything else we do. These comments that I'm making for you individually are tailored editorial advice so that you can write better essays going forward. So please take them seriously. Please address what I'm telling you in your letter of reflection, which you'll be writing this week. This was me just praising the author. And again, conclusions were kind of a problem for some of you, and that's why I've added a PowerPoint presentation this week about introductions and conclusions so that people can work on those. The conclusion should be short. Remember, your reader just got done reading these few pages. They don't need you to go over everything you just wrote in the conclusion paragraph. In the conclusion paragraph, you want to just briefly, and I always italicize or underline that word, briefly restate the thesis. So readers remember what the core takeaway is from your essay. And you also want to do a kind of graceful exit. Give a final thought or ask a final question that makes the reader think about what they've just read that you've written for them. Okay. And again, these are all things that you can look up online. Any questions about essay writing are available. Sorry, I'm going through puberty. Just kidding. All that stuff's available online. And I also want to remind you about your textbook. There is a lot of very, very useful information at the back of the book. Very, very useful information for writing your essays and getting an A in this class. But again, if you want to look things up individually online, because it's sometimes quicker, just make sure to look up how to write good conclusions in college essays, how to write a good introductory hook. Anyway, but those are things I've included in the PowerPoint for this week, so you don't have to look those up. But if you're ever curious about wordiness or comma splices or fused sentences or improperly integrated quotations, things like that, that some of my students have pretty much every semester that I've ever taught, those things are available not only in the back of our book, but also online. If you type in MLA, which is short for Modern Language Association, if you type those things in and look them up online, you will have more than enough information to help you going forward with those things. But that said, pretty much all of it's in the book and it's covered in our lessons each week. And one last thing, the author needed a works cited page, and that needs to be formatted MLA style. I didn't really deduct points for missing works cited pages this week because I want to focus on your writing, which is the most important thing you're going to do in this class, is write and be able to express yourself clearly to people. But going forward, make sure to add a works cited page and make sure that you format it MLA format. I'm going to stop the video now because I know these eat up a lot of data and I actually don't know how long it's going to take for this to download and upload and all that stuff. So hopefully this works out. And if you guys have questions, if you are in one of my English 1A sections, my office hours are always 12:30 to 2:30 on Tuesdays, and if you're in the other section, it's 12:30 to 2:30 on Thursdays. If you can't make it during those times, and you have a question for me about writing, please don't hesitate to send me a personal message through our Canvas or just sending me an email to joshua.hardina@rcc.edu if you want to talk to me in more depth about your writing. I do appreciate if you could keep your question limited though. Please don't send me an entire essay and ask me to read it for you. I would need you to do half the work and then I will help you with the other half. So you say, hey, in this one paragraph I wrote, do you think I have sufficiently supported my topic sentence? And then I can look at that and we can talk together about whether you succeeded in that or not. But don't send me the paragraph and say, can you tell me what to change in this? That's showing me that you haven't thought about where your strengths and weaknesses are and where you might need support going forward. Okay, so anyway, it's been good.